Keanu Reeves walked into the wrong bar. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody was nice to him. They laughed at his clothes, spilled drinks on him, and called him names like coward. But Keanu stayed calm. He didn't get angry, even when they were being mean. But then something happened. Just as things were about to get really bad, Chuck Norris walked into the bar. And at that moment, everyone found out they had messed with the wrong man. Before we go on, let me ask, have you ever been treated badly just because you are quiet? If yes, type yes in the comments. Because being quiet doesn't mean you are weak. Now let's get back to the story. Outside, the wind was blowing hard. It sounded like it was warning people that something bad might happen. Inside the old bar, the lights were dim, the air was hot, and everything smelled like old smoke and spilled drinks. There was music playing from an old machine in the back. The sound was rough and deep, like someone singing with a sore throat. But you could barely hear it because of the loud voices, laughter, and people stomping their boots on the floor. Then, the door creaked open. People looked at the door, but only for a second. The man who walked in didn't look important. He wasn't wearing anything shiny. No leather jacket with patches. No big rings. No chains. Just a simple black t-shirt, a brown jacket that looked old, jeans that were faded at the knees, and dusty boots. A cap was pulled low over his eyes. He didn't look scary. He didn't look like he belonged there. He walked slowly to the bar. He ordered a glass of bourbon, no ice. Then he looked over at a table near the window. It was empty. So he walked over and sat down. He didn't say anything. He didn't look around. He didn't try to make anyone mad. But his quietness was louder than yelling. 3 tables away, a big man named Razor watched him. Razor had wide shoulders, thick arms, and tattoos of fire going up his skin. He didn't like the quiet man. Razor tapped his beer on the table twice. That was his way of saying, "Pay attention to me." "Hey," Razor said loudly. The man didn't turn around. Razor leaned back in his chair and said so everyone could hear, "You see that guy? Just walked in, sat at our table like he owns it. Didn't even take off his hat." His friends laughed. "He looks like a janitor who retired," one joked. "Or a lost rock band helper," another said. But the man didn't laugh. He just sat there, looking out the window. He took a slow sip from his drink like he didn't even hear them. Razor stood up. His boots made loud noises on the floor. He walked over to the quiet man's table and leaned on it. "Hey," Razor said. "Did you hear me, old man?" The man finally looked up. His face calm, his voice soft. "Yes," he said. "I just didn't think you were saying anything important." That was all he said. He didn't yell. He didn't insult anyone. Just a simple sentence. But it felt sharp, like it poked Razor's pride. The men at Razor's table laughed harder. "He's got jokes," one said. "I think he's funny." "He thinks he's better than us," Razor said. "No," the man replied, lifting his glass. "Just quieter." Razor didn't like that. His smile turned mean. The bar owner behind the counter looked nervous. Something was about to happen. But the quiet man stayed still. He didn't move. He just waited. Not for help. Not because he was scared. He was just waiting. The laughing got louder, but it wasn't fun anymore. It felt more like growling, like animals getting ready to bite. Razor went back to his table and slammed down his drink. "He's got a mouth on him, huh?" he said. "Let's see if he still acts calm when he's covered in beer." One of Razor's friends, a giant man named Brutus, picked up a fresh glass of beer. He walked past Keanu's table and accidentally spilled it. Beer splashed all over the table and onto the quiet man's arms and lap. "Oops," Brutus said. He didn't sound sorry. "Hope your fancy drink didn't mind sharing." Brutus thought the man would get mad. Maybe yell or push him. But the man didn't even frown. He just picked up a napkin, wiped his arm, and dried the edge of the table. Slowly. Calmly. Like nothing happened. Brutus looked confused. "What's with this guy?" he whispered. "Is he even real?" Razor stood up again, walking back toward the man. This time the bar got quieter. Everyone could feel something weird. Something different. The man didn't move. His left hand stayed on the table. His right hand was close to his jacket, which was lying on the chair next to him. The only thing he moved was his eyes, which followed Razor carefully. "You think you're better than us?" Razor said as he came closer. "Too good to talk?" The man looked up and said softly, "No. I just think this place isn't as loud as it thinks it is." It was like thunder inside the quiet room. Razor smiled, but now his smile was nervous. Big words for someone sitting in puddles. Then suddenly, Razor kicked one leg of the man's chair. The chair wobbled. The drink shook. But the man's hand caught the table and stopped everything from falling. Still calm. Still quiet. His face didn't change at all. Razor leaned close and whispered, "You know what happens to guys like you? Guys who act like ghosts until someone steps on them." He grinned meanly. They disappear. The bartender behind the counter watched closely. He'd seen fights before, but never one like this. Never one where the quiet man was the calmest person in the whole room, even while facing someone twice his size. Then the man slowly picked up his coat. Not fast. Not angry. Just gently. "I won't stop you," he said softly. "But I really don't think you want to do what you're about to do." And for the first time, Razor hesitated. Razor blinked. He wasn't used to that feeling. Usually, people get scared just by looking at him. They back down before he even raised his voice. But this man didn't move, didn't shout, didn't even look worried. And that made Razor nervous. He looked around. The whole bar was watching now. No one was laughing. No one was cheering. Just watching. And somehow, that made Razor feel worse. So he did what bullies often do when they feel like they're losing. He got louder. "You got a death wish, huh?" And just then, boom, the front door slammed open with a gust of wind. Everyone turned. Chuck Norris stood in the doorway. His boots were covered in dust. His jacket flapped behind him like a superhero cape. His eyes scanned the room, and they landed on the quiet man first. Everyone knew who Chuck Norris was. And everyone froze. Razor's mouth opened slightly. His fists dropped to his sides. Chuck walked slowly into the bar, straight toward the quiet man. When he got there, he nodded once. "Sorry I'm late," he said. The quiet man looked up, smiled just a bit, and nodded back. "No worries," he said. "Right on time." Chuck turned to Razor. "Are you bothering my friend?" Razor swallowed. "No, sir," he said quickly. "Just misunderstanding." Chuck didn't smile. "Fix it." Razor backed up. So did Brutus. And the others. Suddenly, they were all quiet. No more laughing. No more yelling. The quiet man stood up slowly, dusted off his jacket, and walked toward the door with Chuck. As they passed, no one said a word. The wind howled again as the door opened. And just like that, they were gone. The bar stayed quiet for a long time. Because everyone there had learned something important. Being calm doesn't mean you're weak. Sometimes the quietest people are the strongest. And sometimes, they have friends like Chuck Norris. Razor walked into the room quickly, stomping over to where Keanu was sitting. His big black boot hit the leg of Keanu's chair. Thud. He did it again, harder this time. But Keanu didn't move. Not even a little. He just sat there, still and quiet. Razor didn't like that. He scrunched up his face and growled. "Fine," he said. Suddenly, Razor grabbed the glass of brown drink from in front of Keanu and threw it across the room. Crash. Glass flew everywhere behind the bar. The bartender jumped, scared. But he didn't say anything. Then Razor reached down, grabbed Keanu's black leather jacket from his lap, and threw it on the floor. He stomped on it with his boot. "Let's see how calm you are now, tough guy," he said, grinding his heel into it. Finally, Keanu looked up. But he didn't look mad. He didn't even look annoyed. He just looked a little sad. "You done?" he asked quietly. Razor laughed loudly. "Done? I'm just getting started." He pulled back his arm, ready to punch. Everyone in the bar held their breath. But Keanu? He didn't flinch. He slowly stood up, like fog rising from a lake. He was tall, way taller than people thought when he was sitting. He stood straight, hands at his sides, shoulders relaxed. He didn't look scared. He didn't even look angry. He just stood there. Razor paused. His punch slowed. Something felt off. He wasn't sure anymore. Keanu didn't get ready to fight. He didn't raise his fists. He just spoke. "This isn't about me, is it, Razor?" Razor blinked. "What?" "You're not trying to prove anything to me," Keanu said calmly. "You're trying to prove something to them." He nodded toward the other people in the bar. "Because if one quiet man doesn't listen to you, maybe others will stop being scared too." The bar went silent. Not a single word. Razor's hand dropped for a moment. Then he shoved Keanu hard in the chest. It wasn't strong. It was clumsy, fast, and angry. Keanu didn't fall. He took a step back with one foot, kept his balance, and stood tall again. He looked at his jacket on the ground, picked it up, brushed it off, and put it over his arm. "I came here for a drink," he said, voice calm. "You came here to be feared." He looked around the room. "Looks like we both failed." Razor's fists tightened again, but something inside him cracked. He turned and stomped away, mumbling mean words under his breath. Keanu sat back down, like nothing had happened. But something had changed. For the first time that night, the rusted chain, the bar they were in, felt different. People weren't sure who was really in charge anymore. Outside, the wind howled louder. It slammed against the windows like a ghost trying to get in. Inside, nobody said a word. Razor sat back at his table, angry and embarrassed. He moved his jaw like a dog chewing something tough. The other bikers around him stayed quiet. They had seen Razor beat up guys before. But tonight? This was different. Keanu didn't even fight. He stayed calm the whole time. And somehow that was scarier. At the bar, the bartender kept cleaning a glass that was already clean. He looked over at Keanu, who sat in the corner, jacket in his lap, new glass of bourbon untouched. No one went near him now. Then it happened. The door creaked open, creak, then slammed, bam. The air got cold, like winter walked in. Some people turned to look. Maybe it was just a lost traveler or someone who drank too much and got cold. But it wasn't either of those. It was a man. He looked older, with strong shoulders and a calm walk. He wore a denim shirt, rolled up at the sleeves. His boots went thump, thump, on the wood floor. No one needed to say his name. They just knew. Chuck Norris. A whisper ran through the room like electricity. One man dropped his pool stick. Another gasped. Razor looked up. His face was a mix of shock and fear. "What the heck is he doing here?" he muttered. Chuck didn't say anything. He didn't look at anyone else. He walked straight toward Keanu. Keanu stood up again. A small smile appeared on his lips. Chuck walked right up and placed his hand on Keanu's shoulder. "Long time," Chuck said. Keanu nodded. "Thanks for coming." Chuck turned to face the room. Everyone saw his face clearly now. It was older, yes, but strong. His eyes were sharp, and his expression serious. He looked straight at Razor. "You picked the wrong man to mess with," Chuck said quietly, but everyone heard him. "And you're lucky he's the patient one." Razor clenched his jaw but didn't stand up. He didn't say anything. His hands stayed still. Because deep down, every person in the bar knew something true. Keanu had let him go. But Chuck wouldn't. Chuck looked back at Keanu. "Ready." Keanu picked up his jacket and stepped beside him. They walked across the room together. Like ghosts. No one tried to stop them. The door opened wide, and they stepped into the cold night. But this time, it wasn't the wind that made people shiver. It was the quiet they left behind. The door was still swinging when Chuck turned back to the room. He stopped and said, "I don't usually walk into other people's messes," he said calmly, looking at everyone. "But when a man like Keanu Reeves gets treated badly, you're not just picking on him." He stepped aside and pointed at Keanu. "You're insulting every good man who chooses kindness instead of anger, patience instead of punches. And you're lucky it was him sitting here, not me." The room was so quiet, you could hear the clock tick. Razor growled, still mad. So what now? He shouted. You gonna fight me over some guy who can't fight his own battles? Chuck tilted his head. He looked a little amused. You think this was about fighting? Chuck asked. This was a test. And you failed before you even said your first word. Razor jumped up. Test this, he yelled. He ran straight at Chuck. It was a big mistake. Chuck didn't move back. He moved forward. With one clean spin, Chuck lifted his leg and, kicked Razor right in the chest. Crack. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. Razor flew backward like a rag doll, hit his table, and crashed to the floor with bottles and chairs falling all around him. He didn't get up. Nobody went to help him. Chuck took a deep breath and turned back to the bar. His voice stayed calm. I've seen men like him my whole life, he said. They shout, they act tough. But the moment they meet someone who stays calm, they don't know what to do. He looked at Keanu. You handled it better than I ever could, Chuck said with a nod. But I figured a little punctuation wouldn't hurt. Keanu smiled a little. Thanks, he said. A biker sitting nearby, with a snake tattoo on his neck, raised his hand nervously. Wait, Reeves, he said. As in, Keanu Reeves. Someone gasped. Another person swore under their breath. Chuck laughed. You didn't know? He turned to the bar. You all watched him get pushed, insulted, stomped on. And not once did he fight back. He stayed calm, strong, silent. He looked around. That's real strength. Not being loud, not scaring people, but standing in the storm and not becoming one. And with that, Chuck and Keanu walked out into the cold night. And the rusted chain was never quite the same again. He stopped talking and looked slowly around the room. If you ever forget who he is again, Chuck said, I might come back without saying I'm coming. Chuck gave Keanu a small nod. The two men turned and walked toward the door. This time, nobody said a word. Nobody moved to stop them. They just stepped aside like water moving around a big rock. They watched as the storm, Chuck, and the calm, Keanu, walked out together. The big wooden door closed behind them with a heavy sound. A gust of wind rushed inside, blowing some napkins across the floor. The room became very quiet. The silence felt cold and heavy, like a wet blanket that no one wanted. No one moved for a long moment. Then, slowly, the bartender put down the glass he was cleaning. He let out a long breath and said softly, Was that really Chuck Norris? Someone near the pool table mumbled, Yeah, but that other guy, was that Keanu Reeves? The name felt like thunder in the room. Everyone froze. Glasses clinked softly. A few people sat up straight, thinking back to what they had just seen. They remembered how calm Keanu had been. How he didn't fight, even when people were mean. How he didn't shout or get angry. How he just stayed kind. One person took out their phone with shaking hands. They looked something up quickly. Then, wide-eyed, they turned the phone around. On the screen was a photo of Keanu Reeves, smiling outside a motorcycle shop. Same face. Same black jacket. Same quiet feeling. Holy cow, the person whispered. On the floor, Razor groaned. He held his ribs and tried to sit up. But nobody went to help him. The bartender laughed a little, but it was a nervous laugh. He looked embarrassed. I gave Keanu Reeves a glass of bourbon, he said. And then I just stood there while everyone treated him like garbage. He shook his head. I should have kicked them out the second it started. Another biker, one who hadn't said anything all night, stood up slowly. He said in a low voice, I thought he looked familiar. But I never thought a guy like that would be in a place like this. That's the point, the bartender said quickly. He wiped the bar fast, like he was trying to clean away guilt. He didn't want to be noticed. He just wanted to be left alone. Someone else whispered, and even when we were mean, he still left with kindness. Everyone slowly looked at Razor. He was sitting up now, breathing hard. But no one was scared of him anymore. They only felt sorry for him. A young waitress who had been quiet the whole time leaned over the bar and asked, Do you think he'll ever come back? The bartender looked over at the small table by the window where Keanu had been sitting. He thought for a moment. I don't know, he said honestly. But if he does, someone better make sure his drink is ready. And that nobody says a word until he does. The whole room turned to look at the empty table. Just one chair. One glass. One big lesson. That man they embarrassed wasn't just a movie star. He wasn't just a martial arts expert. He wasn't just famous. He was the calmest person in the whole room. And now that he was gone, they finally understood what real strength looked like, and how small they had acted in front of it. Outside the bar, the wind blew colder, like even the night air had learned something. Chuck Norris and Keanu Reeves walked quietly side by side across the gravel parking lot. Their boots crunched on the rocks. Behind them, the neon lights on the bar flickered. It was almost like the lights were trying to say sorry. They didn't talk at first, just walked in silence. Then Chuck finally said, "You didn't need me in there." Keanu looked over and smiled just a little. "Maybe not," he said. "But they did." Chuck chuckled and nodded. "That's true." They reached Chuck's old pickup truck. It sat under a streetlight that was barely working. They stopped and looked up at the sky. Stars peeked through the clouds. "You didn't throw a single punch," Chuck said. His voice had respect in it. Keanu looked at the ground, then back at the bar behind them. "No," he said. "I've thrown enough punches in movies. Sometimes people need to see what it looks like when you don't fight." Chuck nodded slowly. "I've always said the strongest man in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove it." Keanu smiled a little again. "And yet," he said, "you kicked that guy across the bar." Chuck raised an eyebrow and smirked. "Hey, I didn't say I was the strongest guy in the room." They both laughed, and it was a happy sound, the kind that made the night feel lighter. Then, after a moment, Keanu spoke one last time. His voice was soft, but it carried meaning. Being kind doesn't mean you're weak. Being quiet doesn't mean you're afraid. But a lot of people only understand that after it's too late. Chuck put a hand on Keanu's shoulder. "They'll remember tonight," he said. Keanu nodded. "Let's hope they remember the right part." The two men got into Chuck's old truck. The engine started with a growl, and they drove off into the night. Back at the bar, no one talked. No one joked. No one laughed. They all sat quietly, thinking. They looked at the one empty glass still sitting on the table. That glass, left behind, said more than any long speech ever could. Because real power isn't about yelling. It isn't about hitting. It isn't about showing off. Real power comes from staying calm. Real power is knowing who you are and not needing anyone to clap for you. That night, everyone in that bar learned a lesson. Not from a fight, but from a man who didn't fight. From a man who stayed kind when others weren't. From a man who didn't shout but still spoke the loudest. If you like this story, tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more fun adventures and mysteries. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.